What if I told you that half the world's population is actively plotting to destroy the US dollar's dominance? And what if this plan is already working? Right now, as you're watching this video, Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, the BRICS nations, are executing the most ambitious financial coup in modern history. They're not just talking about it anymore, they're actually doing it. And here's the kicker. If they succeed, your morning coffee, your gas tank, even your smartphone could cost dramatically more tomorrow than they do today. I'm your host at Global Trade Watch, and today we're diving deep into the battle that could reshape the global economy forever. To understand why this is happening, we need to go back to 1944. Picture this. World War II is ending, and world leaders gather in a small New Hampshire town called Bretton Woods. They make a decision that will define global finance for the next 80 years. They choose the US dollar as the world's reserve currency. What does that mean exactly? Simple. When countries trade with each other, whether it's oil from Saudi Arabia to Japan or soybeans from Brazil to China, they do it in US dollars, even if America isn't involved in the transaction at all. This gave America an incredible superpower. Think of it like this. Imagine if every time someone wanted to buy or sell anything in your neighborhood, they had to use tokens that you printed in your basement. That's essentially what happened with the dollar on a global scale. Today, about 60% of all global foreign exchange reserves are held in US dollars. Nearly 90% of all foreign exchange trading involves the dollar. And here's the big one. Almost all oil trades worldwide happen in dollars, which is why we call them petrodollars. But here's where it gets interesting. In 2009, right after the global financial crisis, something changed. China and Russia started having private conversations. Brazil joined in, then India, then South Africa. They weren't just complaining about American economic policies anymore. They were planning an alternative. The BRICS group, which started as an economic forum, began transforming into something much more ambitious, a parallel financial system designed to bypass the dollar entirely. So what exactly are they doing? Let me break it down into three major strategies. Strategy number one, creating alternative payment systems. China launched something called CIPS, the Cross-Border Interbank Payment System. Think of it as China's version of SWIFT, which is the messaging system that banks worldwide use to transfer money. But here's the twist. CIPS allows countries to trade directly in their own currencies, completely skipping the dollar. Russia, after facing sanctions, doubled down on this approach. They created their own system called SPFS and started demanding that unfriendly countries pay for Russian energy in rubles, not dollars. Strategy number two, bilateral currency agreements. This is where it gets really clever. Instead of both countries converting their money to dollars first, they're trading directly. China and Russia now settle about 95% of their trade in yuan and rubles. Brazil and China have a similar arrangement. India is paying for Russian oil in rupees. Let me give you a concrete example. When Brazil sells soybeans to China, instead of Brazil getting dollars and China paying dollars, Brazil gets yuan directly. China pays in yuan directly. The dollar never enters the equation. The numbers are staggering. In 2022, China settled over $700 billion in cross-border transactions using the yuan, up from practically zero just a decade ago. Strategy 3, the BRICS currency proposal. Here's the nuclear option they're considering, a completely new currency backed by a basket of commodities like gold, oil, and rare earth metals. Imagine a currency that isn't controlled by any single country, but is instead backed by actual physical assets. And they're not stopping there. BRICS just expanded from 5 to 11 countries, adding Egypt, Ethiopia, Iran, Saudi Arabia, and the UAE. That's not just growth, that's strategic expansion. Saudi Arabia alone handles about 13% of global oil exports. Iran has massive energy reserves. The UAE is a major financial hub. Combined, these 11 countries now represent about 45% of the world's population and roughly 35% of global GDP. That's bigger than the G7. Now, you might be thinking, this sounds like high-level economic stuff. How does this affect me personally? Great question. Let me paint a picture of two possible scenarios. Scenario 1. If BRICS succeeds gradually, if the dollar slowly loses its dominance, Americans could face what economists call imported inflation. Right now, because everyone wants dollars, the US can essentially print money without causing massive inflation because those dollars get absorbed globally. But if that changes, your iPhone, which contains components from China, South Korea, and Taiwan, could become significantly more expensive. Gas prices could spike because oil producers might prefer payment in yuan or euros, making it more costly for American refineries to purchase crude oil. On the flip side, your wages might not increase proportionally, creating a squeeze on household budgets. Scenario number 2. If there's a sudden shift, this is the scary scenario. If major oil producers suddenly announced they're no longer accepting dollars, something Saudi Arabia has hinted at, we could see rapid dollar devaluation. Think about what happened to the British pound in 2022 when investors lost confidence. It crashed 20% in a matter of weeks. Now imagine that happening to the dollar, but with global implications. But here's the thing, this isn't unprecedented. The British pound was once the world's dominant currency. Before that, it was Spanish silver, then Dutch guilders. Reserve currencies do change, usually during periods of geopolitical upheaval. However, there's another perspective. Some economists argue that BRICS currencies aren't stable enough to replace the dollar. The yuan is tightly controlled by Beijing. The ruble is highly volatile. The rial, rupee, and rand have their own economic challenges. The dollar became dominant not just because America was powerful, but because it was predictable, stable, and backed by strong institutions and the rule of law. So what happens next? Let me give you 3 possible timelines. In the next 3 years, we're likely to see more bilateral trade agreements outside the dollar system. Oil transactions in alternative currencies will probably increase from about 20% today to maybe 40% by 2027. The US will likely respond with its own strategies, possibly launching a digital dollar or strengthening alliances with traditional partners like Europe and Japan. In the next 7 years, this is when things could really get interesting. If BRICS successfully launches their commodity-backed currency and it gains traction, we might see the dollar's share of global reserves drop from 60% to maybe 40%. This wouldn't be a collapse, but it would be the end of dollar hegemony as we know it. America would have to start caring a lot more about its fiscal policies because the world wouldn't automatically absorb excess dollars anymore. We'll likely be looking at a multipolar currency world. The dollar, euro, yuan, and potentially the BRICS currency could all serve as regional or sector-specific reserve currencies. Think of it like the internet. Instead of one central authority, you have multiple systems that can interact but aren't dependent on each other. But here's what's really fascinating. This isn't just about economics anymore. It's about geopolitics. Currency dominance translates directly into geopolitical influence. Right now, when the US wants to pressure a country, it can threaten to cut them off from the dollar-based financial system. That's how sanctions work. But if half the world is operating on alternative systems, that tool becomes much less effective. There are some major unknowns that could accelerate or derail this entire process. 1. Technology. Central bank digital currencies could completely change the game. 2. Crisis. A major financial crisis could either strengthen the dollar's safe haven status or accelerate the flight to alternatives. 3. Politics. Changes in leadership in key countries could shift these policies dramatically. The truth is, we're witnessing history in the making. Whether you're an investor, a business owner, or just someone trying to understand why gas prices fluctuate, these currency wars will impact your life in ways we're only beginning to understand. This is exactly the kind of analysis we do here at Global Trade Watch, breaking down complex global economic trends and showing you how they affect real people in the real world. If you found this deep dive valuable, smash that subscribe button and hit the notification bell. We're tracking the story as it develops, and trust me, there are going to be major developments in the coming months. And here's something cool. We're building a community of viewers who actually understand global trade. And on our next video, we're diving into China and Russia's secret plan to replace the dollar. You won't want to miss that. But before you go, here's something that should keep you up at night. What if I told you that while we've been focused on BRICS, there's another player that's been quietly building the infrastructure to challenge the dollar, and it's not who you think? I'll give you a hint. It's a country that most people think is America's closest ally, but they've been secretly preparing for a post-dollar world for over a decade. Drop your guesses in the comments below. The answer might shock you, and it's going to be the focus of our next deep dive. Until next time, keep watching the world trade because the world is definitely watching us.